Birds 24/7. Break it down. And Josh joins me now with a look at the possibility of Carson Wentz and possibly a quarterback in the first round. You know, they just signed 2 quarterbacks, Josh. They got a lot of money invested in 2 guys. Would they be willing to add a third of that magnitude?
I mean, if they have, a high grade on Carson Wentz or Jared Goff, it sounds like from, the reports and the talk around the league that Carson Wentz is the guy that they're higher on. Then if they have a higher grade on him and they think he could be a franchise quarterback, then yeah, they could absolutely take him. Now, I don't think that they'll end up trading up to grab a quarterback, to give up a few picks, maybe a couple of first rounders or second or third, really don't know what it would take, but still just giving up all those picks to move up doesn't make a lot of sense right now with where the Eagles are. But, if one of those guys falls to them at number 8, then I do think it's definitely a possibility that they'll take either Wentz or Goff.
What would that mean for Bradford? I had Phil Savage on yesterday. He said he wouldn't be surprised at all if the Eagles took a guy and then dumped Bradford. Is that a little harsh?
Well, I imagine Sam Bradford would think that harsh after signing that deal and getting traded not too long after. Now, for them to do that, though, they would have to have a lot of confidence in whoever they're picking. And the one reason why I'd be hesitant to think that they would do that is because, say you take a guy at number 8 or, however you get him, you get either Wentz or Goff. There's still a solid possibility that guy doesn't pan out. So if you were willing to invest this contract into Sam Bradford to give him another year to prove if he's a franchise quarterback or not, I think you still give him that year. I mean, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, it's not like these are guys who you expect to come in, start right away, and, light up the league. These are guys that are going to take at least a year to develop. I mean, ideally, you want to give them time to kind of sit down, learn the offense, get accustomed to the league. You don't necessarily want to throw them into the fire if you don't have to. So I think you should still take a look, see if Bradford's the guy, and then if Bradford is not the guy, then you obviously have a great backup plan in whoever you pick. But in order for them to dump Bradford, they would have to be very, very confident that Wentz or Goff is the guy.
In this situation, okay, under the one that you just laid out, that they would have to have confidence to move their guy. Let's say they keep Bradford, though, and they don't move him. You have a first-round pick, top 10, and he's your third stringer? Does that sound like it makes a lot of sense?
Well, here's what they would do. I mean, to me, it would really play out in one of 2 ways. I mean, after 1 year, things would significantly change. Either you think Bradford's the guy, and you maybe try to trade, whoever you take at number 8, whether it's Goff or Wentz, and you stick with Bradford because you like what he shows you in 2016. Or if you don't like what you see from Bradford, then you move up Wentz or Goff from the number 3 spot to the number 1 spot. Obviously, Chase Daniel is not going to be, the long-term solution at quarterback. He's just there to he knows the offense, help other quarterbacks learn the system. But to me, it doesn't change that much in terms of Bradford because I already looked at the Bradford deal as a 1-year deal. Either he plays well and they renegotiate his contract after 2016, or he doesn't play well and they cut him. So I think that what this would do is it would just give them a very good backup plan. But it would be quite the storyline if you have Bradford having kind of another mediocre year with the number 8 overall pick waiting in the wings.
Recipe for possible anarchy in the crowds there. Josh Paunil is with us, PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. I know this is a really tough question, and I won't even take credit for it. I did a radio show today, and the host asked me this question. 2017 is the starting quarterback on this roster.
Oh, that's a tough one. Wow. I'm really 50-50 on that. I'm going to say no.
Wow.
I think that.
So it's not Bradford or Chase Daniel or drafted player.
It could be. If we're including Chase Daniel, I'm thinking if you're talking about just 2017, I'll say yes. But I guess I'm thinking more towards the long-term solution. But if you're talking about just 2017, I'm saying yes because if it doesn't work out with Bradford, then I think Chase Daniel will be the guy in 2017. I think that's part of the reason they gave him the money that they did was not just because he was a top-of-the-line backup quarterback and a guy that knows Peterson's system, but if things don't work out with Bradford and you don't have a guy waiting in the wings, then Chase Daniel can kind of be that stopgap between Bradford and whoever the future guy is. But so just 2017, I'll say yes.
All right. Wentz yesterday threw, and this quarterback class is not supposed to be a great class. There's no player that is on the Winston or Mariota level. The Eagles have already moved from 13 to 8. Now, yesterday when we had Phil Savage on, he said you don't make a move from 13 to 8 unless you have somebody targeted for that spot that you had to make a 5-spot jump. If that's the case, who in your mind would the Eagles be targeting at 8? Or are they targeting to move up again?
I really think it's a matter of kind of the top-tier drop-off. I mean, that's what I've heard. I mean, I've heard other people say that around the league, that there's a drop-off after the top 10 guys. Now, obviously, don't know if it's the same top 10 the Eagles have, but I do believe that there is this belief within the Eagles organization that after the top 10 prospect, there's a drop-off. So just to get up, it's kind of like the philosophy of when, there are two top-flight quarterbacks, and you just trade up to the number 2 pick just so you can get one of them. You don't know which one you'll end up taking, but you know that you're confident in both and that you'll end up with one of them. So I think it's that kind of philosophy the Eagles are taking to move up to number 8. And some guys that just, make sense, like Vernon Hargraves, the cornerback from Florida. Maybe they have a high grade on Ronnie Stanley, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame. But I really think it's going to come down to draft day and to just see, just who is available at number 8 and who's the best player there.
Josh, has their moves this offseason indicated to you that they think, at the very least, we're a 9-7, 10-6 type team, we just want to try to get into the playoffs? Because if that's the case, does drafting a quarterback in the first round that high make any sense?
Oh, I mean, the moves have absolutely indicated that they're trying to make the playoffs next year. I mean, that's the one thing that Jeffrey Lurie talked about after he fired Chip Kelly. Was his big thing was the trajectory of the team. That was one thing that concerned him with Chip, was that, instead of getting better each year, the team was either staying the same or getting worse. And so I definitely think the Eagles are trying to make the playoffs, win the division, which is, honestly, that's a realistic possibility. Despite the season they just had, this NFC is not a very good division. So I also think they're balancing, okay, let's get playoffs this year and have success long term. Because if they take a guy at number 8, if they take a quarterback at number 8, then that really is a pick for the long-term success of your franchise. And that's really what you have to do. Is it's not just win now, but you have to consider the short-term, mid-term, and long-term ramifications of all the picks and decisions that you're making.
And Wentz, who threw yesterday, I don't know what you think of him. He looks like, big kid, got the tools. I know some people have compared him to Flacco, a little bit more athletic. Is that a guy that you believe, Josh? I know you look at Bradford's here, Daniel already here, and do you think that it's a smart move for them to make that deal if the right deal is in place? Is Wentz a guy that has enough intangibles and the skill set to say, you know what, that is the move you should make? Because right now, I'm not so sure. For my personal, I'm not so sure that it's worth giving up a whole heck of a lot if you got to move from 8 to get to 2 or 1. I think that's a little foolish.
Yeah, I would not.
And I was a proponent last year of making the move to get Mariota because I felt that Kelly needed his guy. I'm not sure that Wentz is a difference-making guy for Peterson, though.
Yeah, and I'm against the idea of trading up to try to get either Wentz or Goff. I mean, these are two guys that both of them are rated, relatively low compared to the last, 5 quarterbacks or the last 5 classes. The quarterback to the top of those classes. These aren't Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota guys. I mean, these are guys that are rated lower than Blaine Gabbert by a lot, just in terms of coming out of college. So it's not like these are two guys that are kind of sure thing, can't miss, Andrew Luck type guarantee this is going to be a franchise quarterback. So when you have that much uncertainty around these guys, if they'll be franchise quarterbacks, a few years from now, I don't think you can mortgage your future and give up all those picks to move up for guys that really you're not that confident in.
You're right. And, I was talking about this today. A lot of people mock the RG3 deal from a couple of years ago that they got ripped off or that they lost that deal. Let's say this. Washington made the playoffs because of RG3. The Rams have still not made the playoffs because of that deal. So really, Washington has won that deal, even though people think the Rams ripped them off. So if you get your quarterback that you think is the guy, you do what you got to do to go get him. I'm a proponent of that. RG3 got hurt. I don't know that he would be the player that he is if he doesn't get hurt. I mean, who knows? But they did make the playoffs. People forget that, and the Rams have still not made the playoffs. But I'm not sure a guy that gets you to a playoff berth and turns your franchise around. So that's why in this instance I'm against, but I'm not against in all instances if it's the right player.
Yeah, and that's really why in this show I don't think the Eagles should trade up in draft, Wentz, or Goff. But last year, with the benefit of hindsight, I would have supported trading up and getting Mariota because I do have confidence that he's going to be a franchise quarterback in this league. When you look at past deals, it really doesn't come down to what teams gave up to move up in the draft. It comes down to whether they got their guy or not. I mean, do you think the Ravens care about what they gave up for Joe Flacco, or the Giants care about what they gave up to trade up and get Eli Manning? I mean, the fans probably can't even name what they gave up because they got their franchise quarterback.
Totally agree.
And so if you get your franchise quarterback, it's hard to give up too much to get your franchise quarterback. The danger is, and this is why I don't think they should do it with Wentz or Goff, is the hit rate when you do that is low. So if you don't have confidence that this guy's, kind of a can't miss or surefire franchise quarterback, then you don't make that deal. But that's the only type of guy you make that deal for is an Andrew Luck. And RG3 was obviously a guy that was ranked very highly coming out of college too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and I said this before, you could have J.J. Watt, great defensive player, but that team is a 7, 8, 9 win team. They might have a great defensive player, but they don't win because they don't have a quarterback. So even the deal, I know people thought it was ridiculous, the deal that was reported that Kelly was ready to do. I think I still would have done the deal, even if they took Fletcher Cox. If we had Mariota, that kind of wipes away all of the problems that you have if he's the right guy. If he's the right guy, which, as you said, it's not always a home run. But let me ask you this question. So if the Eagles trade up to 1 or 2, that makes no sense. What if Wentz or Goff is on the board at 8?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would be fine with taking them because the problem that I have with trading up in general is my big philosophy is I'm more of a trade back kind of guy. Stockpile the pick. The NFL draft is really a crapshoot, and the way you increase your odds on the hit rate, not even the hit rate, but the way you get, you maximize the draft potential is you just get more picks and you pick more people. I mean, that's what the Patriots, the Ravens, the best drafting organizations do. They kind of stockpile those picks. Even if, no matter how confident you are in your scouts, no matter how confident you are in your front office, you're going to have misses. So you really want to maximize those picks. So, unless they have a big option to trade back, just take your guy at number 8 if you want to. But my problem is when you give up picks to move up and really increase the rate or increase the chance that you completely miss. Because if you give up a few picks and spend it all on one guy and he's not it, then, I mean, that's a huge risk. But if you just use the picks that you have and take him, then, I'm fine with that, with taking one of those guys at number 8.
Josh Paunil, PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. Rueben Randle, inconsistent, maddeningly inconsistent, talent, bad route runner, drops. Are they done at wide receiver?
In free agency, I think so. I mean, I think when you reach this point in free agency, what it really comes down to is kind of the bargain bin type deals. I mean, if guys are still free agents now, then they probably weren't the top priority. Number one people that teams wanted to get, when free agency started. So, if there's a guy that they could get and only give up $250,000 in guaranteed money, or some incredibly low number like that, then go for it. But I think draft is where you would see any kind of addressing of the wide receiver position. I mean, they still have incredible youth, but when you have the uncertainty that they have, I mean, we don't know how Josh Huff is going to do. Rueben Randle, like you said, the inconsistency, it wouldn't surprise me at all to take a wide receiver like a Sterling Shepard from Oklahoma. So in free agency, I don't think you'll see them make any big moves, but the draft, I do think that they could select a receiver.
Josh, they made the move a couple weeks ago to bring in Brandon Brooks, and Jason Kelce had a down year. Does Doug Peterson think that they need an upgrade at the center position, or does he think there's a reason why Kelce struggled?
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting. And when we talked to Peterson at the owners' meetings on Wednesday, I don't think he quite realized the indictment that he made on Alan Barber and Matt Tobin. I mean, why do you think Jason Kelce struggled last year and took a step back after those Pro Bowl caliber years in the past? And his reasoning was, "Oh, we really need to get him some more help next to him." And I believe his words were, "Having two solid guys next to Jason Kelce will really help him." So, he didn't name Matt Tobin and Alan Barber, but I thought that was a huge indictment on what he thought of the surrounding offensive linemen, that, okay, we just need two solid guys next to him. So I do think that Brandon Brooks signing, the Eagles think that will really help Jason Kelce. And then when they pick a left guard, presumably in the draft, that should help Jason Kelce. So their thinking really seems to be, it's not that, Jason Kelce just got worse, or, he was just so terrible that we can't really fix it. But their philosophy is, if we give Jason Kelce some help and some talented guys next to him, he can still be a productive guy for us. He can still be a good leader and a good anchor on that offensive line.
Josh, do you think, though, that 8 is a spot where they would look interior line? I mean, that's not a traditional spot in the draft where you would find an interior lineman. Not that you said that or indicated that, but is number 8 a spot where they might draft a guy who maybe is a tackle by trade and they swing him in? Or do they feel, we can find a guard 3rd, 4th round, and, typically you can find a guy in the 4th round, plug him right in, and Kelce was a 6th-rounder, starts right away. So do they target an interior player at 8, or do they say, 3rd, 4th round, we'll find a guy?
Well, I don't think it would be directly targeting a guy at number 8. I think if they got a guy at number 8, an offensive lineman, it would be the first scenario that you laid out, was they would draft an offensive tackle who they think could be a good right tackle in the future, obviously assuming Lane makes that shift from right tackle to left tackle at some point, sure up those offensive tackle spots, and then have that guy play guard for maybe a year or however long he needs until Jason Peters is no longer with the Eagles. So they won't pick a guard or anything at number 8, but they could draft an offensive tackle who plays guard at first and then transitions to tackle and tries to give a good bookend on both sides of the offensive line. But I think that would be the most likely scenario. And that's going to be the interesting thing, is if you take a guy like Ronnie Stanley, is he able to play the guard spot? So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to kind of decipher as the draft process continues to chug along.
Yeah, Tunsil, Stanley, Conklin, those guys are primarily tackles first. A couple of guys, Cody Whitehair has played some tackle, but many people look at him as a guard. Are you going to draft a guy at number 8 that's primarily a guard? Most likely not. So I think they're in an interesting situation there. What about at this spot right now? Now, Peterson the other day mentioned a bunch of places where they'd like to get some help. Corner was one spot. Is that the most likely position at number 8 because of position of where they draft and of need?
I'm not sure that cornerback is more likely than offensive line. I really think it will come down to best player available, because you have guys like Ronnie Stanley and Vernon Hargraves, and also tackle and a cornerback, who are kind of projected to go in that maybe 6 to 8 range. So it really depends on, maybe only one of those guys will be there, maybe neither of them will be there. So offensive line and corner are definitely the top 2 areas of need that the Eagles have pinpointed. But I really do think it'll come down to best player available in terms of, if Ronnie Stanley's not there, then absolutely they could go with Vernon Hargraves. But if Ronnie Stanley's the top guy on their board, then I definitely think they'll go with him and address that offensive line need.
All right, Josh, last one for you. Josh Paunil, Birds 24/7 over at PhillyMag.com. A lot this week about the dysfunction in the Eagles front office based on Roseman's comments, Lurie's comments, Kelly's comments. Did you get the sense, being at the NovaCare Center, that there was total dysfunction and that it carried down to the field?
Yeah, and that's really something that we kind of found out more and more after Chip got fired. I think it was Lane Johnson who talked about how the dysfunction in the front office and the higher-ups kind of trickles down to the players. When you have that kind of tension, I mean, I thought it was interesting, Chip Kelly told us at the owners' meetings on Wednesday was that he didn't even talk to Howie Roseman. They kind of used an in-between guy, Ed Manowitz, and they didn't speak to each other. So when you have that level of dysfunction, it's really not good for the organization. One thing that I think fans are probably wondering, why is the media so interested in Jalori, Howie Roseman? It's about how the players do. Well, football's like any other business. If you have dysfunction at the highest levels, it's going to seep down. The best football teams have the strongest organizations at the top, like the Patriots. So when you have teams that have dysfunction at the top, I mean, who comes to mind? Washington, the Browns. When you have that level of dysfunction, your teams aren't going to be any good. So that's why it really reinforced the notion that they needed to split up, because it just seemed like an awful situation for the Eagles to be in.
He's Josh Paunil, covers the Eagles for PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. It's been a busy offseason. The draft now takes over, as although they did make another free agent signing this week with Rueben Randle. And Josh, always good enough to jump on board. Thanks, pal.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Have a good weekend.